Welcome to week 6 of physical science with Mrs. Johnson. Hey, last week you guys did a nice job getting wrapped up with what we had been doing. This week you got to take a quick little 10-question assessment so we can make sure that you've got the scientific method, which is down here. Let's make sure that you got that down pat, that you understand the difference between an observation and an inference. And you know what I loved, what I realized last week, is that you were doing observations and inferences in your English class also. We just called, what did she call them? Sensory observations, I think. Those are just our qualitative observations with our 5 senses. All right, this week then, do that assessment. You're watching my video lesson right now. You're going to watch a Bill Nye video on atoms and molecules, and then you'll do lab number 5, which is just quick, simple little activity to hopefully tie your lesson together. So this week, I had a piece of paper. And if you were in class with me, I would have you take just a little piece of scrap paper, and I would say, tear that up into the tiniest possible piece that you can get. Just keep ripping it in half. And you guys would sit here and it would be like confetti in my room by the end of the day. There would be tiny pieces of paper everywhere. And those people who have long nails, they'd be able to get these tiny little microscopic pieces that you could barely even see, and if somebody were to breathe, it would just blow away. So you tear that piece of paper into the smallest possible piece that you can, and guaranteed you get it down to that tiny little minuscule piece of paper, and that tiny little minuscule piece of paper still has billions and billions of particles that make it up. You know what the name of those tiny little particles are? And it's the tiniest particle out there. Think about it for a minute. It's called an atom. Hopefully that was the name that you were thinking. An atom is the tiniest particle of all matter. And I'm not talking about living matter. I'm talking about all matter. This, my keys, okay, the metal in my keys, the glass in my old lady glasses, the fabric in my mask, the metal in my jewelry, the cloth in my clothing, this white erase board. It is all made of matter, and that matter is made of atoms. Atoms are the tiniest particle. So today's quick little lesson has to do with atoms. What is an atom? Well, a little bit of background. So back about 400 BC, there was a gentleman by the name of, and I know I'm going to screw up the way that it's said, but his name was Democritus. He was the very first person to introduce the idea of an atom. The idea kind of got buried for many, many years, and it was back in the early 1800s that James Dalton reintroduced the idea of an atom. James said that an atom is actually made up of 3 parts. Well, wait a minute, I said an atom's the smallest part out there. If it's the smallest particle out there, how can it be made of 3 parts, right? Couldn't you just break it into those 3 little parts? Well, guess what happens when you break the atom apart? Boom, you blow things up, okay? The atom bomb, you cannot safely, or at least we haven't at this point, found a way to safely remove the 3 parts that make up an atom into their separate parts. Because when we do that, everything blows up and then nothing. All your data gets destroyed. So the parts that make up an atom. The first part is going to be, and I'm going to just draw you a little diagram because, well, I'm not an artist, but it's easier to see it that way. The very first thing that we've got here in an atom is the center called the nucleus. And I'm going to draw it as a circle, but it's not necessarily a hard shell. This is called the nucleus. And you should have learned in the past, I'm sure you learned it last year in your science class, that the nucleus means the center. So really the center of the atom, the nucleus, is made up of 2 of the 3 particles that are found in an atom. First particle I'm going to talk about is called a proton. And I'm going to put 3 protons inside this nucleus. And they are called protons. and protons have a positive charge. Proton, P, positive, P. Hopefully you can make that connection. Protons have a positive charge. And eventually we'll learn that a positive and a negative cancel each other out. I think you're probably already doing that in math if you haven't done so yet. So in the center of the nucleus, we have these protons. We also have these things called neutrons in the center or in the nucleus. Now neutrons, my students are always like, oh, I know the Jimmy Neutron. Well, yeah, Jimmy Neutron got his name. Remember, he's a kid genius, a scientist. Neutron is one of the three particles that makes up an atom. Maybe I should label the top of this, an atom. Jimmy Neutron, or our neutrons in an atom, they are neutral. Jimmy Neutron is neutral. He is not positively charged. He is not negatively charged. He is neutral. So some people put a little equal sign there to kind of help them remember that it's neutral. The nucleus, the center of the atom, it's full of protons, it's full of neutrons. And the last part is zipping around the outer edge of the nucleus. We've got this like cloud. They call it the electron cloud. And the particles out here, if I got a pen that works. Ah, there we go. The little particles that zip around out here, these are called electrons. And our electrons are going to have a negative charge. So once again, to recap what we said earlier, everything on Earth, not just living matter, but all matter on Earth is made up of the tiniest particles called atoms. An atom is made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons, but we cannot rip those protons, neutrons, and electrons apart from each other without creating an explosion. So we say that an atom is the smallest particle. One last little bit of trivia, and you'll see it in the Bill Nye video, and it's that an atom of paper is different from an atom of, say, glass only by the number of protons. In next week, the week after, we're going to start to use this periodic table, which came home a few weeks ago. This periodic table is going to outline all the different types of atoms that are found on our Earth, that we've found so far on our Earth. And you're going to eventually learn that an atom of glass is different from an atom of paper solely by the number of protons. Okay, so this week, 10-question assessment on the old stuff. You just watched your video lesson. Sit back, kick back, watch Bill Nye answer a few questions with it. And then lab number 5. All right, have a good week. Stop into my class, stop into my office hours.